Since Amazon acquired full creative rights of the James Bond franchise several months back, there's been a lot of speculation regarding who's going to play James Bond in the foreseeable future. And right now, according to these latest rumors, Amazon might be considering a race swap James Bond moving forward. Rumor, Amazon MGM Studios discussing Aaron Pierre as next James Bond. And personally, I don't really know anything about Aaron Pierre as an actor. I can't recall actually seeing him in anything or if he's a great actor or not. I'm just going to grant that he's probably a good actor or anything without knowing anything else about him. I still don't think he should be playing James Bond. I mean, first of all, Ian Fleming described James Bond in detail in his book, and he's definitely a white guy with blue eyes and dark hair. In fact, that was actually a point of contention when it came to Daniel Craig being cast as James Bond, is that he didn't have dark hair, and there was a lot of criticism about that. Now, for the most part, he was okay, or at least in the early movies, kind of tapered off as things went on. But Casino Royale was still, I would say, a pretty good movie, even if I didn't necessarily care for some of the latter ones with Daniel Craig in it. But I think this would be taking it a step too far to have a black James Bond in the upcoming James Bond movies from Amazon. A new rumor alleges that Amazon MGM Studios is eyeing Aaron Pierre, who plays Jon Stewart in the upcoming Lanterns show, to play the next James Bond. A report by Fiction Horizon, this rumor originated from Daniel Reichman, who claims that Pierre is being considered. However, he also added, not sure if they actually met him though. So I guess he's saying Amazon hasn't necessarily met him, but his name is just being brought up in the conversation. Now, like I said, this, or like the article says, this is coming from Daniel Reichman, and he's an industry scooper who has inside sources from various studios. And I'm not saying he's necessarily not reliable or reliable. I would almost say maybe like a 50-50, or at least I'd even say, if I'm generous, a little bit more reliable than not. But still, I mean, this isn't an official announcement, and he has gotten stuff wrong in the past regarding casting announcements. Even more recently, he was the one who talked about, who brought forth the news that they were considering Hunter Schafer in the role of Princess Zelda in the upcoming live action Zelda film. Something that we found out shortly after was completely bunk, or at least it wasn't entirely. Daniel Reichman had some reason to bring up Hunter Schafer in the conversation because he was actually brought up, but it was because a PR firm working for him basically pitched him to the studio, something that is actually pretty standard within the industry. When a studio is looking for an actor for a particular role, there'll be people, that's kind of like what your PR people do and your agents do. Basically the studios will go to agents and PR people within the industry and be like, okay, who do you suggest that we should look into casting, or who we should have an audition for the role? And then they give their client's name. So Hunter Schafer was a part of that because a lot of people are seeking that role. And that's what Daniel Reichman picked up on, but a lot of people kind of ran with it. And yes, he kind of insinuated that Hunter Schafer was in the actual conversation at the studio, but that necessarily wasn't the case. So maybe that's what's being brought up right now, where he just heard his name being brought up in relation to casting for the upcoming James Bond movie. Maybe it's even a name that was dismissed, but still it was brought up in the conversation, or maybe it was even in the conversation of like executives sitting there like, okay, who should we cast? And don't suggest Aaron Pierre. I mean, I'm not saying that's what happened, but that could have been what happened. And then Daniel Reichman hears that name was brought up in the meeting and then just kind of runs with it. And that's where you're getting stories like this. Additionally, Reichman claimed that Amazon plans to begin filming the movie sometime next, but obviously does not have an actor nor a director attached to the project yet. So nothing is confirmed by this point. So you can just take these as pure rumors. And I think that's fine if you want to take it as that, at least be a little bit cautious, or not necessarily run with, oh, they're doing this right now. They're doing a race swap James Bond. It's all over now for it. I mean, obviously if they did do a race swap James Bond, I would say that that's a bad sign for what they're going to be doing for the future of the franchise, because I've said this many times in regards to either entertainment or like movies, TV shows, video games. Whenever they're doing these DEI pushes and these sort of things, it's usually an indicator that the people working on it are not necessarily looking for the best quality. They're looking for the best quality that checks the right boxes. And usually when they do these sort of things, it's kind of an indicator that there's going to be other problems somewhere down the line. So that's usually at the point where I'm like, okay, this is probably not going to be very good. Back in March, Amazon MGM Studios announced that the next James Bond film would be produced by Amy Pascal and David Heyman via their Pascal Pictures and Heyday Film Companies. And if you actually go further down into this article here, of note, Heyman is working on HBO's Harry Potter series where they race swapped Severus Snape. Pascal is also currently producing the upcoming film adaptation of C.S. Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia, which is reported to have sex-swapped Aslan. And that was also something that was going around, that they're going to do a female Aslan for the Narnia series. I don't think there's been confirmation on that or no casting announcement. That could still actually happen with it. But the race swap Severus Snape and Harry Potter, yes, that has been confirmed 100% at this point. People are obviously not happy fans of Harry Potter because Severus Snape was described as a white character in the books. And they say, oh, we're going to make this show, but do a faithful adaptation of the books. And the first big casting announcement they had for it, they do a race swap character. And it's like, oh, okay, are you really trying to be faithfully adapting the book? Or are you just trying to check boxes or something like that? Because that's not a very good sign for it. A lot of people want them to change the casting announcement or fire him from the role, but I think that's just kind of wishful thinking. It's probably going to happen moving forward. So you can see the producers of the James Bond franchise are not above doing race swaps if they, I don't know, for whatever reason, even if a lot of fans are not happy with it, they're still going to do it anyway, which to me indicates that they don't necessarily care about quality, especially when you hear news coming out about James Bond, where when Amazon acquired the rights to it, they weren't necessarily concerned about trying to make something good. They were just trying to look for what they called content. And that's the exact words that they use. It is just, think of it as content, not an art form or not a form of entertainment. They're not trying to be respectful or have any reverence to the James Bond franchise or to the IP. They just think of it like, okay, we have the rights to do this. So what can we do to make money out of it or squeeze as much as we can out of this franchise right now? And there was talks of like not only doing James Bond movies and just cranking those out like we saw Disney do when they got Star Wars, but also just having a bunch of shows and other things like that and spin-offs. Basically the James Bond cinematic universe. What Disney did for Star Wars, that's what Amazon wants to do for James Bond, and basically just milk it until it's a husk of its former self, or at least that's kind of what they imply when they just say that they're just looking to do a bunch of sequels, prequels, spin-offs, and other things like that. That's ultimately what it's going to amount to, which I don't think is a good sign for it. So if that's with that in mind, I could definitely see them doing a race swap James Bond for this. But that's not a good sign because, like I said, when it came to Daniel Craig, there was criticism for that. I can't imagine what the outcry would be if they tried to do a race swap James Bond, because I know they've always usually just fell back on the, oh, you just don't like it because you're an istrophobe or whatever. It's like, yes, we've heard that 1,000 times before. It doesn't work anymore and no one cares. And even if people did care about that and didn't like being called that, I mean, they're still going to ultimately vote with their wallet, and when it comes to something on a streaming service, they're going to vote with their screen time. So it's like, well, I mean, if you're going to do this and I'm just not going to watch it, and you're going to see that you've lost your audience, and they don't even have to make a public statement about it. They just have to not watch your stuff. And that's pretty easy to do. So this would be to their detriment if they tried to go down this route. Now, this isn't to say that Aaron Pierre can't actually be cast in a James Bond franchise moving forward. We saw that in the Daniel Craig ones. They had Jeffrey Wright play Felix Leiter in those, and no one had a problem with that. I mean, obviously that came out at a time when it wasn't as overt that people are doing race swaps just for the sake of it. But if they wanted to cast him as Felix Leiter, I don't think there would really be much of an issue about it, because even though he's been white in the past, people are used to seeing a black Felix Leiter at this point. So you could get away with doing that. And since he's playing Jon Stewart in the upcoming Lanterns, I'm sure even though he's British, he could probably pull off an American accent. So if you wanted to have him in James Bond, just have him play Felix Leiter. I mean, maybe that's actually what happened when his name was brought up in the conversation. It was brought up in the conversation for the upcoming James Bond movie, but not necessarily as James Bond himself, but maybe as another character like Felix Leiter. We don't know at this time. These are just rumors. I just can't emphasize that enough. So I just want to share my thoughts about that. But let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. And also, if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest entertainment news. And don't forget to click that like button and share this video out there, because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.